Hi guys, welcome back. Today we're going to tie up a hook rig for pike tube ties, but you could also use this rig for tying a fly on as well, so it's a two hooked rig, a bit like the Bauer type rigs. So what you need is a bit of memory wire. So you can buy this in a variety of shops, or you can get it off eBay, or Kahira Knit and All is also quite a good brand. Take one that suits you for your own strength. So to be honest, I think even much beyond £20 are you likely to break it. In a fish, it just gives you a bit more support. It goes thicker, but the thicker it gets, the more difficult it is to work with. So we have a length here, and you see memory wire you can fold up into a ball and it will just spring back without any memory as such. So we need a length of that 22 to 24 centimeters long, and then we need a little fast attach type clip. So this is like probably a size 0 or something, and we put that onto our length of memory wire, match up the two ends, and that will hang in the middle. So you'll have seen these made with like plastic type beads, but what I find is useful for them is if you take a standard metal bead head for tying gold head nymphs, I suppose, or silver head nymphs in this case. Now on these metal beads, it also, even if it pulls through, this will not split open. So what I do is, metal beads have a small hole end and a thick hole end, so I would pass the wire through the thick hole end because it's a little bit more recessed, and you'll see what happens now. As I pull this up to this end, it should just lock in place with our little fast attach, stop it moving about as much. I tried with the plastic beads and I got a little bit of movement out of it. Next then, I'm going to put on a plastic bead, red one here, a little bit of an indicator, but it also helps just to give you a bit more force back as you're tying, and you'll see what I mean in a second. So you'll use lots of super glue in making this thing, by the way. So I'm going to take a dab of super glue, put it in there just between the two beads, and lock the red one up to the back of that. So now we have our wire support, I suppose, made. Next we have to choose a hook for the stinger. So options on this, the Partridge Patriot Z4 intruder hook. What you need here is a hook, a good strong hook, but that has a fairly excessive bend in the eye. If it's just slightly up, then it won't sit straight. Whenever you put the wire through it, it'll tend to kink off the side. Another one that I like here is this Mustad beak bait, and you'll be looking at something probably from a size 1 up to maybe size 1.0, possibly 2.0 sort of thing. These have the added attraction in that they are red. So I'm going to use the Patriot intruder hook. I'll put that in the vise. So when we're tying this, we want strong thread, so we're going to use 150 denier gel spun here, and we're going to super glue the life out of the whole thing as we tie it. So we'll put in a little bit of super glue onto the shank there before we start to wrap, and then wrap a base of our gel spun onto that and trim it off. So next, what we want to do is take the little armature that we've made, and we'll pass the two ends through the eye of the intruder hook, put on a couple of turns just at the rear, and then pull that forward until it just kicks up a little bit, I think. And then I'm going to do is again super glue all of this and then wrap it. Now what I find is easier to do is to turn it upside down to wrap, because it's easier to deal with the point of the hook. And you'll see that as you wrap forward, it pushes a bead of super glue with it. So we have one layer on, super glue that up again. So as you're wrapping into the super glue, it's fixing all your wraps in place. And when we get to the back here, we want to make sure that there's a good coverage of thread, nice and tight, nice and neat, wrapped into the super glue there, because that basically dam is what's going to hold all together whenever you're playing a fish. Take this forward to the front. Now I'm not going right up tight to the eye, because if I start to wrap up to there, it will start to change the angle of this. So I'll just whip finish that. Trim it off and super glue the whole thing. Essentially like a varnish of super glue over it. Now that's acceptable in itself, that will work. You might need to put on another coat, so I'll set that aside to dry. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take one that we made earlier, and I'm actually going to epoxy the coating of this for a bit of extra strength and durability. So, one we made earlier. Now you can use UV cure epoxy if you want for speed, but what I'm going to do is to use 5-minute 2-part epoxy, and I'll put a little bit of that out on a post-it pad, and I'm going to add an effect to it. So I'm going to take this is pearl glitter, real fine glitter. I'm going to dump that into that, and then I'll mix the two together. And I suppose here you could add all sorts of different colours to it if that's what you want. Don't need a big pile because we're only putting just a little light coating on this. So take our epoxy and just get a light coat. Over all of that. Now then, that needs to dry, so if you put a thick coat on it, it'll run and you'll have to sit with it the whole time. You put a nice thin coat on that, it should probably sit in itself. Now you can put that in a drying rack, or you can put it in one of those revolving dryers, and then I'll just set that off to one side, and then we'll take one that we did epoxy earlier, and as you can see we now have a nice hard, secure coat with just a little accent of flash in it. So next we need to take the main hook. So in this case I'm going to use a Sakuma Manta 545 Extra. You could also use RX's or some of the Partridge Predator type things, or whatever you have to hand basically, but use a good straight eyed and straight shanked hook. So again, super glue the shank, take our thread, and get on an initial base layer. Now that'll weld that to the hook essentially, and give a bit more texture for the wire to be whipped and glued to. So we'll take our previous armature that we made, and what we're going to do is set that up so that this hook here is sitting out at 90 degrees to the other. You can put it like that if you want, you can put it like that if you want, but if you put it to one side, it means that no matter what way the fish comes, there's always a hook sort of in the line of the jaws to it. So for this, what we do is we stick the two wires through the eye of the hook and then fold it down, and when you're happy that it's sitting out to the side, then put a couple of wraps across it with the other hand, keep it in place, and then as before, just going to super glue the whole thing. And wrap backwards over it. Pay particular attention to the rear part here, because that's the bit that's going to take the abuse as and when you were playing a fish. Back to the front. So at the front, we're now going to take these tag ends and fold them underneath with my thumb, hold them up against the shank, and use my other hand to pass several wraps over just to hold that in place. And then again super glue all of that. I'll probably have stuck myself to it, but it just helps to hold it in position. And that now won't pull out. So we'll take it back now to the rear and get a little bit more wrapping on there just to secure it. And at this point, you could finish it off if you want, or what we can do is to add a rattle. So you made little mini rattles from lots of different sources. So essentially they're little glass tubes or plastic tubes with a couple of beads in them. So I'd put that on here at the rear, get a few wraps on it. Now it will want to slip off to one side. Some of them will have like a little nubbin on the end here to prevent that happening. Get that in front of that and then just finish it off. So now to finish it, I would just super glue the whole thing like a varnish, essentially. So that's a rig mount. If you want to go a little bit fancier, what we'll do is set this aside and we'll take one that's got to this stage already. So I'll just set that in my lump of foam here, just with the other stuff. You can see drying. So the previous ones, this one's drying, just the super glue end of it. This one is the one that we put the epoxy onto, and this is the one that we've just done. So you kind of do them in stages. if we take one that we did before, that we've got to this stage now, and this one what I actually did as well was to put on a couple of little beads sliding on the double piece of the wire, and you can hear you can get a little bit of rattle between the beads and the things. Up to yourself. It would also add a little bit more of colour, and you can get all manner of different coloured beads to go in there if you want. So we have our rattle attached in here, and just to make it a little bit more secure, what I'm going to do is put a bit of shrink wrap onto that. So I think this is about a 5mm clear shrink wrap. Use black, use whatever you want. And again, depending on what you're going to do with this hook mount, whether you're going to put it in the back of a tube fly or whether you're going to tie a fly on it, you can choose the length of this. So if you're going to just put it in the back of a tube, then I'd probably use the whole length of the shank. Slip that back over that. And just take a lighter, keep sort of below it. Put it up too close, there's a risk that you could set fire to the whole thing. So. And that just gives our little glass rattle a little bit more protection. So that's our mount made. So the whole point of this mount is so that it can accept, well, obviously there's two hooks, two different directions for hooking. This little fast attach tip thing at the back here is there to accept wiggle tails or other sorts of tail attachments, so wave tails and dragon tails and stuff. So what we'll do is show you how that goes together. So take that off, and if we take another one of our little fast attach clips, and this time what I'm going to do is clip off part of the fast attach clip. So we have the eye essentially. You could use an old rubbishy hook if you want to do this, but the idea is that you have a little bit of a hook or bend at the back here so that the tail does not slide off. We'll put that in the vise, and if we take our tying thread again and attach it to it, dab of varnish super glue on that. Just back this way so you can see. So we're going to attach one of these Paccarini, this is a double XL wave tail in a pink, or dragon tail, sorry. So this is the eye of the fast attach clip. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on the tail this way, pointing towards the eye, which might seem a bit strange, but if we now whip that down, I'm going to put a little bit of glue just on that, and then fold that back. Wind over that. This is a little bit awkward given the size of the tail, but then I'm going to half hitch a few times there, and that will secure the tail in place. Just be careful not to get the super glue back into the actual tail itself, just onto your wraps. Super glue, I suppose, is a solvent in a way, and it sometimes can affect other things. So that is our tail attached to the little eyelet. and that will then clip into the back of the hook mount that we've made. So you have options then as to how you attach this through your tube fly. So you can pass a wire through your tube and attach it to it, or you can make a little armature mount for it. But so essentially what we're going to end up with here, if we take our tube fly, so this is a sort of one of these water pushing type ones, and the idea here is that we will attach our hook by whatever means through the tube, so that will then sit in this sort of hollow portion of the fly, and then we have the attachment here which allows us to clip in place our wave tail. And you want your fly, the material sort of to be coming back just to be on this hook, so you don't want them too much longer behind it, otherwise they may start to tangle. And as you can see, we now have a fly that's heading up for, I'm sure it's a foot long, but you can get different sizes obviously of these and tie yourself a different size of a tube fly, but hopefully that'll help some people. So as per usual, if you like what you see, like, subscribe, tell your friends, bring them along, and until next time, tight lines, and thanks for watching.